Okay, in the grade book, this is going to be 6-8, 6M8. And we're dealing with absolute values. Now I need to talk about what absolute value means because I'm going to be saying that throughout the video. It's a distance from 0 on a number line. Distance from 0. Now here's what an absolute value looks like. We need to evaluate. And here's the first example. Absolute value -6. How many places do I have to count to get from -6 to 0? I don't care what direction I'm going. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's like measuring distance. You always measure distance in positives. Okay. Example 2, absolute value of 3. What's the distance from 3 to 0? 1, 2, 3. Don't say -3. Okay, when I ask you distance, it's always measured in a positive. So whether we have a negative or a positive, we put a positive at the end. Okay, now it gets a little more complicated. We have the absolute value of 2 minus 10. Well, let's figure out what we're taking the absolute value of. 2 minus 10 is -8. Now I need to find the absolute value of -8. So -8 to 0, that would be a distance of 8. Okay, my next problem. Example 4. The absolute value of -4 plus 7. Okay, -4 plus 7 is 3. But the absolute 3 to 0 then is a distance of 3. Next problem, example 5. -2, absolute value 4 minus 7 plus 12. Now let's figure out just the absolute value part first. We'll worry about the rest later. Okay. 4 minus 7 is -3. But what's the absolute value of -3? To get from -3 to 0, you'd count 3. So I drop 3 down. Then I have this -2 in front of it. That means times, and then the plus 12 behind it. Now we times first. Times comes before plus. -6 plus 12. -6 plus 12 is 6. Okay, example 6. First part goes pretty quick. 3 absolute value 2 minus 5 plus 13. Okay, so I have 2 minus 5. Well, we need to figure that out. It's -3. And then the absolute value of -3 is 3. So this whole thing becomes 3. I have a 3 in front. That means 3 times 3 plus 13. So 3 times 3 is 9. 9 plus 13 equals 22. Okay, now we're solving the equation. Solve the equation. Absolute value x equals 2. If you have an absolute value, you're going to want to make a table. Okay, you're going to line up 2 equals, make an x, and make an x. Make whatever's inside the absolute value. Here it's just x. Now there's nothing outside the absolute value. The 2 doesn't count. It's on the other side of the equals. Okay, so I'm going to use 2 as my absolute value. But to have an absolute value of 2, I can be 2 this way from 0, so 2. Or I can be 2 this way from 0, so -2. That's the answers. You got to have them both, though, if I'm going to give you it right. Okay, next one. Absolute value of x equals 10. So again, these next two are kind of easy. So you have x and the absolute value. Now to have an absolute value of 10, to be a distance of 10 from 0, we could be out at +10, but we could also be 10 away from 0 at -10. And those are the 2 answers. Okay. You need to see both of them though. Every absolute value equation has 2 answers. Okay, now the next one's weird. Absolute value of x equals -7. So I've got x, x. We have a little problem. You cannot be -7 places from 0. If your absolute value is equal to a negative, you write no solution. You do not go to your table. The absolute value cannot equal a negative. So be watching for that. Always has to equal positive. Okay, next one, absolute value x equals 5. So inside we have x. Now to have an absolute value of 5, we can of course be at 5 or negative 5. Now these are the solutions. I don't write no solution because that's a positive. Okay, now it gets a little bit more complicated, but not by much. Now, in the absolute value along with the 8, we have the operation minus 8. Okay? But still, your absolute value, no matter what's in it, is equal to 5. Okay? So you could be at 5 or negative 5. Now you solve them both separately. You got to add 8. So x itself could hold a value of 13. Now over here, now you're starting at negative 5 and plussing 8. X would be 3. So those are the two possible values for x to have an absolute value equal to 5. Okay, next one, absolute value of 5x equals 20. So inside we have 5x. I'm going to cover that up with my finger. So the absolute value is equal to 20. You could be at 20 or negative 20. So we're going to divide by 5. And finally I have an equals. I don't have to worry about that stupid sign flipping around. Divide by 5 and x equals negative 4. So those are the two possible values of x to have the absolute value equal to 20. This would give you 20, this would give you negative 20, but either one's an absolute value of 20. Okay, absolute value x minus 6 equals negative 18. Well, what am I doing on the table? Absolute value can't equal a negative, man. So that's a no solution. If you watch that, sometimes you get in the grind, it's hard to. Okay, next one, absolute value x plus 7 equals 8. So within the absolute value, we have x plus 7. Now I cover that up, absolute value equals 8, so I can be at 8 or negative 8. So I subtract 7, so x would be 1 to have an absolute value of 8, but it could also have a different value because we have to account for negative 8. Now I start at negative 8 minus 7, that's negative 15. Okay, next problem. Absolute value of 4x plus 1 equals 9. Okay, so inside we have 4x plus 1. Okay, so the absolute value is 9. I'm good with 9. 9 or negative 9. So I subtract 1. 4x equals 8. I divide by 4, and x equals 2. Over here I subtract 1, and 4x equals negative 10. And I divide by 4, and x is negative 2.5. Okay, both work. Because that gives me 9, that gives me negative 9, but either one has an absolute value of 9, either 9 or negative 9. Okay, next one, absolute value, 3x minus 3 equals 9. So inside you got 3x minus 3. To have an absolute value of 9, we could be at 9, or we could be at negative 9. So I add 3, and that's 12. 3 times x is 12, so I divide by 3, and x is 4. Over here, plus 3, plus 3. Negative 9 plus 3 is negative 6, and I divide by 4, and x equals negative 1.5. You can get decimals too, by the way. Okay, getting down to the end. Absolute value of 6x plus 4 equals 16. So inside we got 6x plus 4. And 16 case, I can be at 16 or negative 16. So I subtract 4 here and I get 12. 6x equals 12. Then I divide by 6 and x equals 2. Here I subtract 4 and that equals negative 20. Divide by 6, that's going to be negative 3.3 repeating. That's okay. Okay, then on the last problem, watch out. It's not that it's hard, it's just got to be watching. Absolute value equals negative 8. That ain't even possible, okay? Because you can't measure distance by negatives. So I got a negative, no solution. Alright, that's all we got for that.